Yeah, if you want your video off, that's completely fine. And everybody can just stay muted. And then I'll tell you the outline now for this class. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes introducing myself and a little background of my story and how I got here. And then I'm going to just do some background teaching that's going to be very helpful for your workbook. I created this workbook as a tool for clients. It was so helpful that I wanted to share it. And then I started getting questions on the background of parts, especially some questions on subconscious mind and how all of this works together with triggers. So that's why I put together this class. So I'll go through some teaching of the background of triggers, what they really are, why it's not your fault, and the inner system of the subconscious that is using the triggers to try to get our attention. And then I'm going to ask everybody stay muted during the teaching portion, and I will have question and answer afterwards. So write down your questions as they come to mind. And then a lot of times other people ask questions and it sparks our own questions. That's why it's really good to have this as a group call rather than just a teaching lecture without any interaction. I love interaction. So this is why I'm using the old school. We're kicking it old school today. I didn't even want to do a slideshow because I wanted to keep that contact with me, with what I'm writing. I'll keep this up for you to take screenshots or whatever you want from it, and then ask the questions after the teaching. And then I'm going to do just a very soft introduction of the online group program that I am creating to help even further. So let me just enable this. Somebody requested closed captioning. Let me just add that for you. And yeah. So if you stay to the end, I do have another bonus gift for you at the end. And we will take question and answers on the online program at the very end also. If you feel you're not interested and you want to drop off, that's completely fine. It's whatever resonates with you. So just to start off, it's been a very long journey for me. I had severe childhood trauma, sexual abuse trauma as a child, domestic violence trauma, emotional neglect, and even poverty and oppression. So it was a long journey in trying to get help. And after I had a divorce at the age of 33, I just turned 50. Many of you all know that. That's why I'm doing this in celebration of my Jubilee birthday. I want to take everything that I've learned and studied and grown and bring it to the masses. So at the age of 33, my husband left me for another woman, and it was very devastating to me, and all of the emotions that I was able to suppress up to that point kind of exploded into a volcano, and I started having really bad spirals that began to affect my work. And I was a director of operations in corporate environment. So I looked everywhere for help, talk therapy, books, energetic help. And over the span of about 16 years, I took everything that gave me traction and I studied it. I got trained in it. I got certified in it. I just wanted to bring it to other people because it was so hard for me to find the things that worked. So everything that worked for me is what I'm bringing to you. That includes clinical hypnotherapy, major work in the subconscious, internal family systems, major work in the subconscious. I went to grad school and got my master's in counseling, but found internal family systems during the last year of grad school. And by the time I graduated, had so much benefit from IFS that I decided to focus in the subconscious and not get licensed as a talk therapist. So just to let you know, I'm called a coach, I'm called a practitioner, but I'm not called a therapist. So to start in your workbook, triggers are emotional reactions that are just meant to get our attention. Emotions are a messaging service that are just meant to get our attention. So at the beginning of your workbook, in step 1, it says analyze the trigger. Well, wait, what is the trigger? Why do we even have triggers? Where do they come from? We don't even know why these things knock us sideways. Mine used to even be television commercials. I couldn't even watch TV because a commercial could come up that would trigger me and send me into a spiral. So this is where it gets fun, and my drawing is awful. So perfectly imperfect once again. But I like to draw it out so you see the sequence. When we are young children, before the age of 7, even before the age of 10, we don't have logical reasoning brain. So here's a lovely picture of the brain here, my kidney bean. So the logical reasoning portion of our brain is right here in the prefrontal cortex. Okay, that's logical reasoning. Does not come online, does not exist until the age of between 7 to 10. Starts between 7 and 10. Okay, so what's going on before the age of 7 to 10? Wow, we're walking around as short humans with no life experience, no logical reasoning, no life experience, and we're born with the subconscious. I call the subconscious is really what it is. It's the human instinct here's the key word, survival brain. We're born knowing automatically how to suck a nipple and how to remain connected, requiring our primary caregivers to take care of us, to nourish us, to defend us, and to give us shelter. We know that we're not born as a horse. A colt is born, legs hit the ground, it takes off running across the field. Humans know through evolution, it's in our DNA. We know that we can't survive without our primary caregivers. So this subconscious is at the back of our head, at the base, right there. We know as young children that we need to be accepted by our primary caregivers and not rejected out of our tribe because we can't survive. So we walk around the first 7 to 10 years in the subconscious mind, basically in a hypnotic trance state. Theta brainwave state, slow brain waves, open like a sponge, absorbing all kinds of information. So anytime we're told, you don't have to have a childhood filled with trauma. You could have had the best parents ever. But we take in information walking around as short humans with no life experience and no logical reasoning. We take in information that keeps us accepted by our primary caregivers, which means that we learn how to act, what emotions to suppress, what to say, what to not say, how to dress, how to walk, how to talk, you name it, up to 7 to 10 years to be accepted. So in that time, what happens is parts that are us, that want to explore, that want to play, that want to look at butterflies on the flowers instead of hurrying up to go to preschool, get disconnected. Parts disconnect from their original roles so that they can live life and behave and look and act to be accepted. Okay. So then what happens? I'm using up all this paper. So then what happens? Parts disconnect. And take on beliefs about themselves and the world. These beliefs that the world has to be this way, we have to act this way, we have to suppress this about ourselves. That creates negative emotions. Because they're disconnected from our core essence, our self energy. The negative emotions is what gets triggered by anything that looks the same as the original pain. But of course, we're adults. We have the logical reasoning brain. This doesn't make sense. Why, when somebody gives me any kind of feedback, any kind of criticism, that I start spiraling into this triggered negative emotion that I'm not good enough, that I don't deserve this, that I'm not worthy? It goes back to the core beliefs. And there's more under the core beliefs. There's unmet needs under the core beliefs. So in step 1 of the workbook with Analyze the Trigger, what we're doing is we're going to look at an issue in life that takes us on, in IFS, we call it a trailhead. It takes us on a path, on a rabbit hole, down into what's underneath the trigger. So that's why step 1 is, what were we thinking when the trigger first occurred? So that helps us slow time down. Knee-jerk reactions happen really quickly when a trigger is activating a core belief of really what an emotional pain from long ago. I call it a core wound. So what were we thinking? The boss said she wasn't happy with how I conducted a project. So then we go behind that. What's the story? It's narrative in the workbook. What's the story that's being told inside you when you even just think of that? When the boss told me that I didn't do the project correctly, the story is, nobody understands me. Nobody understands the way that I work. Nobody understands that I actually know what I'm doing. You don't have to check on me, right? So that's a story underneath. The next step, 3, examine the evidence. So let's see, is the story being told inside of our, well, I lost my paper, the logical reasoning brain? Is the story aligned with what is true? Is it true in other areas? Is it true with the boss? Is it true maybe at home with your spouse? Number 4, feel the emotion underneath it. When we start looking at the story underneath the trigger, we're going to feel the negative emotions that start to come up. It could be disconnection, it could be sadness, it could be anger, frustration. We want to feel the emotion Notice it, acknowledge it, because when we actually slow down and do this U-turn inside of us, turn our attention inside to what we're feeling, that's when the emotion is like, oh, you see me, you hear me. This emotion is trying to get a message to us. When we start to listen, it'll start to relax back. That's going to allow us to drop into the body. Notice the sensation in the body that's underneath the emotion. And we want to listen to it in step 6. What's the emotion telling us? Nothing's fair. I'm not understood. I don't have a voice. And as we listen to the emotion and the message it's giving us, then we start to try to get a little bit of space between it. Because this is what's really fascinating about connection. There has to be a little bit of space in order to connect. Like I tell my clients, if somebody's standing on my head, I can't hug them. I need that emotion, that underlying part of me that's telling the story, to be in front of me so I can then love them, show it compassion, understand it and appreciate it, as in step 8. And then we want to ask, what do you need? This is a key question underneath the emotion, underneath the story, underneath the belief, because under every core belief, under every 100%, there's an unmet need. When we get to the unmet need that's underneath of that emotion, underneath of that belief, then we start to know what it is that we can start to give this part of us that it didn't get before. Some, I don't know, theories, processes call this reparenting, inner child parts. Some call it shadow work, bringing the light to the shadow. Whatever you call it, it's giving that part of you what it didn't get. And it disconnected and created the survival strategy so that it would try to not need that anymore in life, so that it would be accepted. That's a lot to follow. I know I'm giving you a lot at one time. It's okay. And we're going to do questions soon. But we want to look at this space that we can get, getting to know and understand and appreciate what unmet need the part is trying to have attention on and what it's trying to get filled. We want to look at how we feel towards this part of us. This is a key that's really important, because we don't just have one part inside of us that has an unmet need that's trying to get fulfilled. These inner parts in the internal family system psychotherapy model, and in parts therapy inside of clinical hypnotherapy, ego states therapy inside of clinical hypnotherapy, they all have proven that we have multiplicity of mind, which means we all have these parts within us that help us live human life and can get disconnected from us. Even if you grow up in a securely attached home with loving, attentive parents, the average person still has at least 10 of these sub-personalities, of these inner parts in the subconscious mind. I had more like 50 or 60, because I had complex layers, because there were many parts of me that became disconnected through early childhood experiences. So the key with noticing how we feel towards this one part that has emerged through us, going down this trailhead with this trigger. When we notice how we feel towards it, I'm annoyed. oh, I'm so frustrated. This part keeps showing up over and over and over. That means there's another part that needs to unblend. And this is where the process gets really tricky, because we have to keep noticing how we feel towards each part to know if there's still another part blended. And if there is, we need to ask that part to unblend. So a good visual is like a tulip, the flower. It has like those thick, almost plastic looking petals, right? And the petals are all around us like this. And we have to keep peeling back the petals, like unblending from each part, because inside is the stem, is the life force, the core essence, the self energy, the chi. To get to our core essence, who we truly are, we have to keep unblending from each of the parts that are blocking it. So that's why step 11 is keep unblending, noticing how you feel towards the emotion. How do you feel towards this trigger that keeps showing up? How do you feel towards the story that's being told? If it's anything that's judgmental or even has an agenda, it's still a part. You know, you get to the inside of the flower when you feel compassion, understanding, appreciation, love, kindness, patience towards the part. That's when you know you're getting into self energy, into your core essence, into your true being. And that's really who you truly are. I spent first half of my life, in a manager part, second half in a firefighter part, and thought that's who I was. No, I'm just abrasive. I'm just, sarcastic. That's who I am. No, it's not who I am. It was a part running the show because it was scary. So I know that's a lot. That's a lot in a little bit of time. So I just want to go over the next part of the daily parts check-in of the workbook, because this is how we start to prevent triggers. We go inside, we turn our attention off of whatever is in our external world that we're pointing our finger. It's your fault that I feel not seen. It's your fault that I feel criticized. It's your fault. That's not where the gold is. The treasure is inside, turning inward, attention inward, finding out what's going on underneath that trigger. But then the next piece is the daily practice of centering before the triggers even strike. So we're beginning to prevent the triggers from showing up by doing that inner dialogue before we're triggered. So a good way that I just developed it through my own healing process is first thing in the morning, I do morning pages. This comes from Julie Cameron that wrote the Artist's Way book. This opens up so much creativity in life. If you do nothing else, if you just do this, it'll change your life. First thing in the morning, you get up, you write down 3 pages. I write only on the fronts of notebook. You can write, draw, doodle, and don't pay attention to handwriting. Don't pay attention to grammar. Don't worry about what you're writing. You don't even need to ever read it again. This is just a brain dump. This helps clear out all of these emotions and thoughts and stories in our mind that just keep restarting every day. I used to wake up depressed or wake up angry at something that happened 5 years ago. But every day I was reliving the same story as soon as I woke up in the morning. This will start releasing it, expressing it. The second part is to do conscious breath. This is a calming way to sit with emotion that comes up, not in emotion. We want to start creating that spaciousness inside so that we can connect. Conscious breath is a very shortened form of yogic breath, which I teach in the program. That's very effective. It's so effective that it sends me into a psychedelic trip. And I've never done psychedelics in my life. But conscious breath is a shortened form. to sit with the emotion. And all you do is you breathe in through the nose, expanding the belly out. So you want to open up that diaphragm that's kind of underneath your lungs. So deep inhale, expanding the belly out, and then exhale through the mouth, bringing the belly button in towards your spine with a longer exhale than the inhale. This calms the nervous system. It calms the parts that run into survival mode, trying to help you avoid future pain. And then the third step is doing that U-turn, putting that attention inward, and then doing the 12 steps in your workbook. And then the next page is it's a bonus daily checklist that just says the morning pages, the conscious breath, the U-turn for the parts check-in. The universe to-do list is something that I started doing where I had outrageous amount of things added to my plate by inner parts trying to keep me distracted from my emotions. All it is on the left side of the paper, I write down everything that the universe can do for me, bring me, collaborative components, people, projects, opportunities, options, whatever. And then on the right side is what do I actually have to do, action steps in my life experience here in this moment. And it usually ended up, the universe's side was like 30, and then my side was like 1 or 2. And it was just really helpful for my own self-care. If it resonates with you, use it. If not, toss it aside. And then it helped me to begin the day centered, cared for, cherished. And it helped prevent triggers throughout the day. Okay, that's a lot. I know that's really a lot. And I wanted to explain to you the inner system of the structure of how the parts are inside of the subconscious mind, because there are different parts that hold the core wounds that are shoved to the ends of the system, in the basements and the dungeons, under the caves, under the rocks, inside the system. And then there are protector parts that kind of run the show, proactively controlling and reactively, usually annihilating relationships. But they're the ones running the survival strategies. But I'm going to keep it light. I think this is a lot of material to cover in this amount of time. And I really want to hear your questions and see what other questions those spark in other people. So I'm going to leave the details of the inner system and the subconscious with different roles that the parts play for the program. But this at least helps you get through the workbook, which is what I was requested to do. So anyone who has a question, if you will raise your hand on the bottom of the Zoom screen, there should be an option to raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, then I can say your name, and then you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. And you can keep the video off if you don't feel comfortable with the video on.
I have a question. So how do I stop that from doing the knee-jerk reactions, going from like 0 to 1,000, losing my shit? Like, what is your biggest tool for not losing your shit on somebody when you react?
Yeah, man, I had a hard time with that in the beginning because my reaction time was like inside of 0.2 seconds. I would be triggered and like immediately, vomit all over the person in front of me. And Brene Brown even says, we have pain already. We have pain. We either deal with it inside or we force it outside. We project it outside onto other people. So it's a natural thing to do, but that doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. Like I say in IFS, all parts are welcome, but all behavior is not. So to close that, well, it's my span of time was 0.2 seconds. The span of time between your trigger and your reaction time, I believe it was, I want to say it was Pat Ogden, Dr. Pat Ogden, who coined the term window of tolerance. So there is a space of time between the trigger, the stimulus, and the response, the reaction, that's vital to prevent harm to other people in your life. I had to walk away. As soon as I was triggered, I had to know what the trigger response was in my body. Mine was stiffness, like constriction, and then rapid heartbeat. So I knew as soon as I had the rapid heartbeat, I had like a 0.1 second to get out of there. So I called it pause for the cause. Know what your body sensations are when you're triggered and get out of there. Tell the people in your life what's going on, what you're working on, what your goals are, and why you might need to exit. You might need to exit for 2 hours before you can come back and talk about anything. Do it. Do it for your own self-care and do it for the love that you have of other people in your life. Pause for the cause. Go to the bathroom if you have to. Do the conscious breath. Breathe with the emotion and get out your workbook and start tracking the trigger. What was it that set you off? Pause for the cause. And I have to be transparent again. Imperfectly perfect is I don't know how to see if people have their hands raised.
I have another question. You said on blending.
Yeah.
Do you have any tricks or tools? If it's difficult to unblend.
Yes. Unblending is, in my opinion, it's the toughest part of this process. Because when the parts in our inner system are scared, that's when they're like, ah, you know, they're on top of you and they can't unblend while they are scared. Trust has to be built before they're relaxed enough to unblend. But sitting with the emotion, acknowledging the emotion helps that part to relax back. So my ultimate advice for just about anything in life and for unblending is slow down. Slow down. Anytime anything is overwhelming, anytime anything is scary, slow down and acknowledge it. And that will naturally start to bring relaxation to the emotion and really ultimately the part inside. And I see Randy has her hand up. So let me do this. Okay, so Randy, if you can just unmute yourself. Yeah, there you go.
I just did. Thank you. So sorry I'm not on video. I'm in a camper camping and we are not camera ready. But I want to say first of all that, you know, I have heard a lot of what you have said in previous previous conversations. And I just want to say that the way that you described this today, for me, it landed so squarely. But between the visual on the board that you were writing on and the words that you were saying, I literally had my eyes closed and I was able to feel and be in a trigger. And I was saying the triggers out loud that I had. And then when you further said that, you know, when you get to what you think is the trigger, it's not always that. And there are more layers underneath. So I'm sitting here with my boyfriend, and he's doing a whole lot of head shaking because it's resonating with him also. So I don't necessarily have a question other than, okay, what's next, right? Like that's my question, because you've whet our appetites to, we know that we have the triggers. We know that they happen just as fast as your triggers happen, right? You think you're the only one because you had 50 triggers that they happen in 2.5 seconds. I might have only had half a dozen triggers, but they come just as fast and furious. And, I love the idea of the pause. And, one of the things that I recently learned was an acronym called WAIT, WAIT. And it's an Al-Anon acronym. And
Mm.
it stands for, why am I talking?
Mhm.
And you can also say that it stands for, why am I thinking? Why am I thinking that I'm back to when I'm 7 years old and this bad experience happened to me? Why am I thinking that? And I think that it could almost get you out of the trigger to say, wait, like, is this real? And I know that that's something that you kind of, preach and talk about. So
Mhm.
I just want to say, for me, it has really come full circle. Everything that I heard you say, that I heard you write, is now very crystallized for me. And I feel equipped to deal with my triggers in a more timely fashion and be able to get out of it quicker because of what you shared this morning. So thank you very much. This was time
Right.
well spent with you this morning.
Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate all those points that you make. And especially, I want to call out something even more. The goal isn't to shut the trigger down,
Right.
though that is the natural process that will happen. I have 98% less triggers after doing this work. And I had a lot of triggers. I had to control my environment pretty tight because I had a lot of spirals. But acknowledging the trigger is halfway. The weight is awesome. I love that. And we actually, Dick Schwartz, teaching IFS process, uses weight as therapist. Why am I talking rather than having my client talk? It's perfect timing to then circle that attention back inside, like you're saying, like acknowledging the emotion or the part underneath the trigger. But why am I acting like this? Is from when I was 7 years old. Does this apply today? Why am I really watch, my antenna goes up with any kind of bypassing or suppressing. That's what caused the problem in the first place. I tried about 10 years of spiritual bypassing with my triggers. It doesn't work. I just know hands-on experience does not work. It just suppresses even more. So we want to get in touch with that part, even from 7 years old. Yeah, it like somebody has on the chat, I'm bad. That thinking that's the story. I'm bad. And that so often is the story in many of us. So know that you're not alone. That story needs to be acknowledged and held and appreciated and loved before it can be released.
Yeah. And
What
because
they
you're
just
saying,
need to be processed.
yeah, I'm sorry. What you're saying right now, I only mastered half of it, right? So like, I recognize that the trigger is there and I'm able to stop a runaway train. But if I continue, then what's going to happen is I'm not fully releasing it, and it's going to keep coming back and haunting me until such time that I.
Right. You might have cut out, Randy, but you're absolutely.
I don't have to repeat myself. I just convinced myself that I really get it. I thought I got it, get it.
Yeah, it needs to be processed and released, which can only happen through love, through acceptance. So it's okay that there's a part of us that feels like it's still 7 years old and it's stuck in the past. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Come, tell me, sit on my lap and show and tell. I call it show and tell with the parts. Show me what happened. Tell me what you went through. What did you experience? What do you want me to know? And then when it's fully witnessed, we call it witnessing in IFS. When it's fully witnessed, it'll be like, okay, I don't need this anymore. I'll release it. And it's literally that simple. Not easy, but it's simple.
I love that, Christine. Thank you for, putting a bow on it, because I think what I said when I cut out was, I got the first part, but I didn't get the second part, that it's not identifying it and recognizing it, that it is not happening in the here and now is part one, but part two is feeling the feeling, feeling the emotion, sending love to that part or that experience or that trigger, and then finally being able to, reparent yourself to finally be free of that.
Mhm.
Did I get that?
Exactly. Exactly. It is basically reparenting these parts of us by fulfilling the need that was unmet for each part. And each part will have a different need that was not met. Even by well-intentioned parents or teachers, there could be, peers, trauma that happened with peers. There can be, preschool teachers, high school teachers, ex-spouses, toxic relationships. So core wounds can be formed even later in life. And here's something that just fascinates me because it showed up in my life so often. The core wound of each part that's not being acknowledged will keep bringing up situations in life over and over and over again to get our attention of the core wound. I'm living proof of that. And I'll tell more about that in the online program. I get kind of vulnerable in the online program and tell my stuff. I am perfectly imperfect, imperfectly perfect. And none of us are on this journey alone. We're all here to help each other. And we all have our roles that we play and our contributions that we make. Is there anyone else that has a question?
I have another question. I was looking through your online magazine and the workbook that goes along with this work, and I wasn't quite sure what the universe to-do list was, your daily checklist. Could you explain that?
Yeah, that's something I've not heard of that anywhere else. I kind of just made it up, that the more work that I did internally with my subconscious, with the different parts in my subconscious, the parts take on a major belief. This is what forms a survival strategy in the first place. The part is disconnected from the whole, so it believes that it has to do the job itself. It has to do everything itself. It carries the burden on its shoulders to handle it itself because it doesn't have that connection yet anymore with core essence. And then core essence is connected with a bigger whole, collective consciousness, source, God, whatever you want to call it. And the parts actually block, cause resistance between our connection to all that is and itself. So the part believes that it's separate, that it's alone. So as the parts began to heal in my inner system, in my subconscious, the parts started realizing, oh, wait, we have help with this. We have self-energy, core essence, but we also have collaborative components that can be sent to us through the universal, all that is nature, whatever you want to call it. So I started just doing my field research and writing down things like send me a landscaper, show me the right bank account, send me an opportunity to market with ease. And it would just pop up, because there was no part there causing resistance. And that's where we get into true creation of life through deliberate intention and manifesting. Everything already is. Our only task is to remove any blocks. And it's just the parts thinking they have to do it all themselves that are blocking through survival strategies. Really good question. It's really fun. Play with it. Anything you need, even research on Google, whatever. Anything that you want to research, just say, bring it to me. And it'll show up if there's not a block. If there is a block and it doesn't show up, awesome, because you can use that as a trailhead. Use your workbook with that. I'm requesting a landscaper and none is showing up within a week. So great question. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to end the recording here for the workbook and do another section on explaining the program. So anyone is free to leave that doesn't want to know about the program that I'm creating. And if you're interested, please stay.